Hello Live at Fivers, it's Peter McLaughlin with BlueSky Hypnosis. Today is Friday Live at 5. Today we're going to be talking about past life regression. I titled it Past Life Regression Explained. So bring your questions. Whatever questions you have, whatever comments you have, anything you've been dying to ask, I'm here today to answer your questions. To me, this is what makes the Friday Live so cool. So without further ado, let's jump right into this. The first question is, that I wrote down, because I like to prime the pump in case we don't get questions immediately, is how a past lifetime can affect your present life. In other words, why should you or anybody else care about past life regression? Well, the answer is contained within some facts about your subconscious mind. So your subconscious mind, its job is to protect you. Also, it has no concept of time. This is where past life regression comes in. So if you suffered some kind of a trauma, say 30 years ago in this lifetime, to your subconscious mind, that trauma happened now. It happened today. And it's the same thing with a trauma that you might have suffered in a past lifetime. If it's still active within your subconscious mind, you could be triggered and actually have no clue of what's causing say an anxiety trigger, or when you drive over a bridge you start to freak out, or you get on an airplane, or a host of other things. So my belief is that when you want to help someone solve their most pressing problems, it's essential to get to the root cause. You have to understand the root cause, because the root cause is driving everything else. It's the foundation upon which the whole superstructure of, call it a problem, can exist. And when you get to the root and you're able to change or heal the original incident that created this whole dynamic in the first place, in essence, you pull the foundation out from the whole superstructure of this problem, and the whole thing kind of collapses. And when this occurs, it really is remarkable. For me, I can speak for me directly. There was a time when anger and rage was a huge thing for me. Certain things would set me off, especially when my kids were little. They would do little kid things, and I would feel like my head was going to leave my shoulders. I could feel my jaw clenching up. In extreme cases, I could feel like my fists were balling up, and I just had this feeling like it's rage. I could put my fist through a wall. And I remember saying to my wife on a few occasions, I need you to take over. I've got to go out and walk around the block. Well, when I worked on my own stuff, both from earlier in my present lifetime and from past lifetimes, something that I did in that work, in that healing work, changed my subconscious mind. And it moved where my subconscious was from viewing certain things, triggers, as a threat, to viewing them as something benign. And what was so remarkable is over the course of just a couple of months, I went from what I described to you earlier about anger and rage and my jaw and my fists balling up, to the exact same things would happen. And I was able to not become physically activated by it. I was able to remain in my prefrontal cortex. I was able to just sort of think it through without having an emotional response to it. And so this is the kind of power that is inherent in healing your past. You know, one of the most well-meaning, but in my opinion, inaccurate phrases is, there's nothing you can do about the past. You just have to move on. And I believe that not only I am living proof that that is not true, but I have lots and lots and lots of people that I've worked with over the years, hundreds and hundreds of people that I've worked with over the years, for whom that is not true either. The fact is, you can heal the past, because the past, to your subconscious mind, is not past, it is present. All right, let's see who's here. Martine Massey. Hello, Martine. She is asking, hello everyone and good evening. Is everyone okay because of the hurricane? Yes. We live in Florida, and a hurricane rolled through here 2 days ago or something, and everything is good. So thank you for asking. Appreciate that. Flower to the people. Hello to you. Woo Kim. Hello, Woo. Estelle says, hello, I can't stay now, but can you save the live, please? Greetings from Bulgaria. Yes. Yes, indeed. Red Rover, hi, Peter. Good to see you. Jane Kasenik. Jane is saying, hi, Peter. Still trying to discover a past life regression. I just can't seem to have one. Thank you. Okay, so let's tackle this. This is exactly the kind of thing that I really want to come up in these lives, like real life issues. You know, you're saying that you've tried to have past life regression and it doesn't work for you. So what I'm gonna comment on this, and I'm gonna also ask you, Jane, if you'll give a little bit more detail. Have you tried this live with a hypnotist? Is it all just on YouTube using, for example, my past life regression tracks? How many times have you tried it? What happens when you do this? In other words, your eyes are closed. Are you just, with your inner eyes, are you just seeing all black? Are you able to hear anything? Are you able to feel anything? Do you get little flashes, or is it all just totally dead? Do you feel any emotions when you have done this? So if you could fill in the blanks a little bit, I will see if I can kind of troubleshoot this for you. One of the first things that I will say, in the absence of more information from you, at least now, is that the most common reason, well, there are kind of two most common reasons why a person who wants to do past life regression is not able to do it. Reason number one is they have a misconception of what they think it should be versus the experience they have or what it is. So if you're expecting to be in a catatonic sleep-like state, if you're expecting to have no control, no volition, if you're expecting not to doubt anything that you're experiencing on the inside, if you're expecting to see things like a movie, then that may not at all be what the experience actually is for you, but it doesn't mean you can't have a past life regression. The second most common reason that a person would have problems with past life regression would be that they have a fear. It could be a conscious fear, but most likely it's a subconscious fear. Remember what I said earlier about how the job of the subconscious mind is to protect you. It also has no concept of time. So part of the way that it seems to want to protect us, not always, but often, is to suppress old trauma, old painful material, because it knows when you re-experience that material, you could be frightened, you could be scared, you could go into a feelings of grief and so on. And so it tries to suppress that. But the problem with suppressing is that it's like, if you think of that old material, the memories of the old material, as toxic or as poisonous, trying to keep toxins or poisons inside of you will come out in some other way. The example that I gave earlier about how I used to have this issue, this problem with rage and anger, and it really came out with my kids when they were little, and then I did all of this work with hypnosis, with present life regression, with past life regression, I came back and it was entirely gone. Well, that toxic material, suppressed, pushed all the way down, still finds a way out. And so that would be the second reason. So the first reason is that they're expecting something and they don't get what they expected, and so they think it didn't work. And then the other really common reason is that if someone can't do a past life regression is that they have fear about it. And it may not be a conscious fear, it may be a subconscious fear. So we'll see if you flesh this out a little bit, because if you do, we'll try to troubleshoot it for you. All right, let's see who else is here. Sarah W. Hello, Sarah. Wonderful as always to have you here. Weird question, but does anyone ever see future lives? Does that trauma affect us now? That's an awesome question. And I don't have lots of experience with, we would call it a future progression. So you have past life or present day life regression, and you can do a future progression. The way I've always approached a future progression is helping somebody. Let's say that somebody is, they've got anger and rage, or they're a smoker, or they're afraid to get on an airplane. So sometimes working with clients, I will progress them to a future date. It could be this life. It could be a future life where they have solved this problem. Now, obviously, when you're working with somebody, you don't want to have to go forward into a future life when they've solved the problem. You want to do maybe it's 6 months from now, or maybe it's 6 years from now, or 20 years from now. But you can progress them into a future life where they have solved this problem, or they have changed in some other important, positive, and meaningful way, and then let them have that experience. Your question, however, is about, can a trauma that occurs in a future life affect you now? It's an awesome question, and I think theoretically it could, but I don't have direct experience with that, because all of my experience with future progression has been around a resource, something that a person has in the future that they don't have now, and bringing that experience into the present and allowing them to have that experience inside their body so they know what it feels like. This is the same thing that I would do, and another way you can use past lifetimes is you can take someone into a past lifetime where they had a resource, where they had an ability. So a person who's never really felt, say, loved in this life. Let's say they never felt loved by a primary romantic partner. You can take them into a past life where they did have that experience, and let them go through that lifetime with this, really loving husband or loving wife, for example, and they can feel what that's like in their body. They can see the way this other person is looking at them, and in a sense, it's almost like, you know how when a fire in a fireplace is sort of dying down, and you come in with a poker and you poke around, you're introducing more air, more oxygen into the coals, and it starts to burn again. I think of it that way. So that can be really useful. So Sarah, I wish I could give you a hard and fast answer on this one, but the honest truth is I don't really know. Theoretically, to me, it could, but I haven't run into that yet, so I can't give you a more authoritative answer, but a great question, and thank you for asking. Andrea likes music. Hello, Andrea. Welcome here. Haven't seen your face here, and glad to have you here. Hello, I've been drawn to this more lately. Glad for this opportunity to learn more. Absolutely, and please feel free to ask any questions that you have. There are no silly or stupid questions. They're all perfectly valid, and you never know. The question that you have may benefit other people as well. So yeah, thanks for being here. Martine says, she's talking to Sarah. Flower to the People says, when I was 5 years old, out of the blue, I had a panic attack and went screaming to my mom that I didn't want to die. Can a person have a flash like that about a past life when a child? This is a great question, Flower to the People, and the short answer is yes, absolutely. In fact, small children tend to remember their past lifetimes far better than adults do. It's like when we are growing up, we're learning many things, and we're learning it really fast. And one of the things that we're learning is what is acceptable and what isn't. What allows us to be approved of by our caregivers, excuse me, and by society at large, and friends and so on, and extended family members, and what causes people to raise an eyebrow at us. What do we get punished for? And so, largely speaking, when a child, says to his parents, and this has happened many times. In fact, there are several researchers out in the world that have specialized in investigating past life claims by children because there are so many, and children don't have that same filter. There are even these amazing stories of children being able to recount the lifetime of a fairly obscure person, and knowing all of these minute details that, when investigated, turn out to be correct. The one that comes to mind immediately is that a child, I want to say in the last 10 years, perhaps longer, maybe have been 15 years, started telling his parents about a lifetime that he lived in the 1920s. And it wasn't like he was living as an American president or he was living as a famous general. He was living as an actor. And this actor, this was a time when it wasn't even a talkie. There was no sound to the movies. It was all just, the silent pictures. And he wasn't a famous actor. He was just a very small, in the background. I think we would call them extras now. And he went on from that to become a talent agent. And his favorite drink was this certain kind of soft drink that isn't manufactured anymore. And he was married, I may have this detail not quite correct, but you'll get the idea. He was married, say, 3 times and gave the names of his wife. And every one of these details checked out. And this was something like a 5-year-old child. So yes, children absolutely can have flashes of a past lifetime. And that could create the kind of fear that you're talking about, Flower to the People, this panic attack. They can also, as the example that I just gave, come forward to their parents and say things like, "You're not my first mother. This is not my first family." And it kind of scares and horrifies the parents. Generally, they think something's wrong because the whole concept of reincarnation is not something that our culture has embraced in a big way, the way other cultures have. Or other times and places, that has just been a sort of thing that everybody accepted. I actually cut out a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, the famous author, the famous writer, because there have been these people throughout our history, in our culture, that obviously believed in reincarnation. They obviously believed in past life regression. And Emerson lived in Concord, Massachusetts, and I grew up in a very small town right next to Concord called Lexington. And Walden Pond, where Henry David Thoreau was for a couple of years, is half in Lincoln and half in Concord. And at the Concord Bridge that started the American Revolution, Minutemen, not just from Concord and Lexington went there, but Minutemen from Lincoln. And Emerson lived within sight of the Concord Bridge. And I remember growing up and going there and being amazed at this person. Well, I want to put up his quote because I find this absolutely eloquent as well as fascinating. Oh, there's Flower to the People. Sorry about that. Let me just put on my glasses here. Here we go. The soul comes from without into the human body as into a temporary abode, and it goes out of it anew. It passes into other habitations, for the soul is immortal. It is the secret of the world that all things subsist and do not die, but only retire a little bit from sight, and afterwards return again. Nothing is dead. Men feign themselves dead and endure mock funerals. And there they stand, looking out of the window, sound and well, in some strange new guise. As I say, I love this quote. I mean, first of all, he's such a magnificent writer, and I just love the way he puts it. And it's marvelous to have a window into the thinking of someone like this. And as I say, he's not the only famous person to write about reincarnation, to write about what we would call past lives or past life regression. There's a scene in a movie about General Patton, a famous American general from World War II. And in this scene, he's looking out over a stretch of desert in North Africa. And he's recounting to his aide how he was there before. That he fought, I can't remember exactly, but I think he fought with the Carthaginians. And he described everything about being there to him, to Emerson, to several other famous people who in their writings have made it clear that they fully believed in past lifetimes. And when we open ourselves to this as a possibility, it then allows you to have the experience of your own past life regression. And I believe it's not really for me or anyone else to tell you, well, yeah, that's definitely true, but rather for you to have the experience and then decide what it means for you. Because nothing can quite compare to having that first person experience, especially when the emotions get engaged. In past life regression, it will often be the case where you regress to a scene in a past lifetime, and you come across another person or you come across other people, and you burst into tears. Now, consciously, you have no clue who these people are. You've just encountered them ostensibly for the first time if you don't believe in reincarnation or past lives. And yet, all of this emotion comes up. Where did the emotion come from? This, to me, is enormously powerful, because it could just be a benign scene. It could be somebody standing in front of you and you look at them and bang, there go the tears. To me, this is like one of the most powerful markers of the validity of past life regression. And yet me telling you this is not anywhere near, anywhere close to you having a similar kind of experience. Alrighty. Here is Woo Kim. Hello, Woo. Why do you think it is that re-experiencing trauma through hypnosis helps heal the trauma rather than exacerbating it? Is it perhaps because we realize it is not as horrible as we remember it to be? All right, I love this question. Thank you for asking it. There's a couple of answers here, and I'm going to start with the sort of outside of the question and move my way in. The first part of this is that when you do past life regression, you always are aware, you always know that you are in your present body, that you're sitting in your chair, in your house, you're listening, for example, to me, and there's no question that that reality still exists. You know for a fact it does. I often will describe this as, it's kind of like having two screens, two flat TV screens. And when you start the regression, one of them is all the way forward and the other one is back. The one that's forward is your present life. And the one that's back here starts to move forward. This is your past life. And it starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger and take up more and more of your attention. And your present life begins to recede, but it never goes away. You're always aware of it being there. So when you go into a past life, part of your consciousness recognizes, wait a minute, that was me then, this is me now. Therefore, I must have survived whatever it was that happened then, which I believe in and of itself provides healing, it provides relief. But that's not the most potent kind. It is my firm belief that it is not enough to simply go in and visit the past life, but that it is vital to actually heal the past life. So as many of you know, excuse me, for many years, 14 years, I was a volunteer firefighter and an EMT. And when we were trained in emergency medicine, we were taught to do a rapid assessment of a patient. Somebody's in a car accident, they fell out of a tree, they cut off their fingers with a snowblower. And part of that rapid assessment is to not just focus in on the obvious wound, but to check their whole body and make sure you're not missing something that's even more pressing to deal with than the thing they're complaining about or the obvious wound. That's step one. Step two is to intervene, is to take action, is to do something. It's not enough to just say, oh yeah, he cut 3 of his fingers off and he looks like he's in shock and his blood pressure is really low. You're supposed to do something next. Step two, you bandage up the hand. Like, start taking some kind of action. Put him on a stretcher, give him some oxygen. It's the same with a past life regression. It's not enough, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, it's not enough to simply go back into the past lifetime and to investigate who you were and what happened, the key moments in that lifetime, all the way through until your death, and perhaps even after. No. It's important to once we've collected all that information about the past life, like doing a rapid assessment, on a street after a motor vehicle accident, to now bring the person in their consciousness back to a safe, sacred space that was created before they went into the past life, and in that sacred space to do the healing. What is the healing? The way generally we're really hurt in this life is in relationship, right? Somebody cheats on us. They lie to us. They betray us. They physically hurt us. They may kill us. That incident has to get, in my view, has to get repaired, has to get healed. And almost always, not entirely, but almost always, this is done through some form of forgiveness or atonement. So when you're in a state of non-forgiveness, whether it's something that happened in this life or in a past lifetime, it's like you're energetically handcuffed, let's say, to the person who harmed you. The only key that releases you from that bondage is forgiveness. And depending upon what happened, depending on who you are, depending on who the other person is, that forgiveness may be relatively smooth or it may be difficult. But that's one very powerful example of something that can be done to heal that lifetime. You know, the other thing is it might be you did something, or you might have perceived that you did something, and you may be carrying around guilt and shame for something. In that case, we would want to heal that as well. And in some cases, when there's a physical wound and the person in their present life has pain in that area of their body, we'd also want to heal the physical wound in that liminal space, if you will. So let me know if that answered your question. But those are sort of the two large areas. A, why simply visiting a past lifetime can cause healing, can make a shift or a change, and why actively doing something, to heal whatever it was that caused that wound, so that the former you is not carrying that wound with them anymore, because that passes along to you. And then the other thing is that once your past life self has been healed in this sacred space that I talked about, we then ask your spirit guide, who's overseeing all of this and providing their wisdom, and you're asking the question based on my prompting. We ask the spirit guide, is it in your highest and best interests, now that your past life self has been healed, for them to merge with you, for them to integrate with you, and for the two of you to become one? I'd say about 2/3 of the time, the guides say, yes, that's exactly what we want to happen. And then about 1/3 of the time, the highest and best is for them to go into the light. But we don't want that component of you, if you will, still carrying around that pain. We want to make sure we have that healed. I'm so glad you asked that question, because to me, this is absolutely vital. It's not enough to just witness the past lifetime. You've got to do something about it in order to affect change. And, I hope that answered your question. Alrighty. Jane Kusenik. Hey, Jane. Okay. So Jane asked the question before, or made the comment saying that she's had a difficult time trying to do past life regression. She hasn't been able to do it. And I asked her a bunch of questions and asked her to flesh out the answers to my questions so that we could maybe troubleshoot this. And what she is saying is that she hasn't done past life regression with a hypnotist. She's just done YouTube. She's used my video and she's used others. She's used a video several times in a row before she tries a different one. Mostly, she says, I just see blackness. One time I saw different colors, yellow, purple, and green. Okay, so the first thing that I would say, Jane, is within our physical body, we have 5 physical senses. And the 3 that people often get segmented by is acronym VAK, V-A-K, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, meaning that for some people, it's a visual, for others it's auditory, for others it's kinesthetic as their primary sense that they use to interact with the world. And An example that I think about all the time when it comes to kinesthetic people, kinesthetic means touching, holding and manipulating something, that our public school systems in the United States were designed by primarily visual people. And so who tends to flourish in public schools? Well, big surprise, visual people, because it was designed for visual people. Secondarily, it works for auditory people, lectures, people talking at you. And so you're processing something in an auditory fashion. Well, the people for whom it was not designed are kinesthetic people. And those people tend to not do very well in a public school setting. And so where do they send them? They send them to the vocational institute, the place where you use your hands, where they tend to do pretty well. So it's the same when you do something with inside of your consciousness. You have an internal sense of sight, you have an internal sense of hearing, and you have an internal sense of touching and feeling. And I'm not saying that the other senses, taste or smell, don't exist, but this is generally how people, in a scientific, psychological way are kind of segmented. And what's important is that I think most people, because we live in a primarily visual culture, believe they're supposed to see their past life. And if you go into it really focusing on seeing, and you, for example, are kinesthetic, it's probably just going to collapse. It's probably going to fall flat on its face. And it may be that you're focusing so hard on seeing something that you're not actually feeling like, oh wow, my left foot or the soles of my feet feel like they're heating up. They feel like they're getting hot. That's where we would want your attention to go at that time and say, okay, well, does it feel like you have on shoes or no? Oh no, it feels like I'm barefoot. Okay, what are you standing on? What's so hot that you're standing on? I guess I'm standing on, it feels like I'm standing on pavement. And in this way, suddenly this past lifetime begins to open to you. And as the past life opens to you, the other senses start to come online. But it's like you have to follow your primary one. I'll use myself again for an example here. I know now that I am primarily auditory. That is my primary way of interacting with the world. When I do my daily self-hypnosis and I meet with my spirit guides, I hear them. Does it mean I don't see them? No. But they're most often rather vague, sort of indistinct shapes. But I can hear them, so I know they're there. When I allow myself, and I've trained myself to do this, when I allow myself to follow the auditory, from time to time, the other ones come online. The kinesthetic and the visual come online. And every so often, I will see something absolutely crystal clear, but only because I entered that space through my primary mechanism for interacting with both the physical world and with the non-physical world. So this is very, very important. The second thing is to use a pendulum. And I know, Jane, you've probably heard me talk about a pendulum a million times, so please forgive me. But for others who are on this broadcast, I have a video on the YouTube channel. It's how to use a pendulum to overcome blocks to a past lifetime. Watch the video, learn how to use a pendulum, and you can ascertain, Jane, what block you have, or blocks plural, you have to past life regression. It could be spiritual entities are attached to you and they don't want you to do this. It could very easily be some kind of a fear, like your subconscious mind knows what's back there and it's not going to let you go back there because it doesn't want you to be, upset. It doesn't want you to be frightened. It doesn't want you to be in a state of grief or anger or guilt or shame. But that just means the poison gets trapped inside of you. So the simple, crazy simple way of overcoming that, if with the pendulum you get, I have a subconscious fear about returning to a past life, is you just close your eyes and you repeat 3 times to yourself, I suspend all of my fear for the next 60 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever the length of the track is. And say that 3 times. I suspend, not I get rid of, not I release, not I eliminate, not I abolish. No, I suspend my fear for the next, and then state a period of time. The shorter the better, because the subconscious seems to be, as we would probably be, much calmer about this idea of not getting rid of what it thinks is its protective mechanism, like a shield. I'm just asking you to put it down for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and then you can pick it back up. And that, generally speaking, I want to say more than 90% of the time, goes right through that fear block. The other one could be a subconscious disbelief. Maybe that you had teachings that said the past lifetimes aren't real, or that it's wrong to think that past lifetimes are real. So you can do the same thing there. You can suspend the disbelief along with suspending the fear. But the key here, I think, for you is to use that pendulum, pinpoint, identify exactly what this block is. And once you've pinpointed or identified that, now you'll know what you need to do to move that block temporarily. That's all we're talking about, is just temporarily move it out of the way. And that should open up the past life regression to you, especially if you follow whatever's coming to you. So if you're expecting to see something and you feel somebody patting you on the shoulder, we don't want you to go away, I'm waiting to see this thing. No, we want you to metaphorically turn around and say, who's patting me on the shoulder and why? All right, hopefully that helps you. Let's see. Oh, Red Rover. Red Rover says, I'm scared to try it. Okay, very good. If you would, please put in the comments section why you're scared to try it. I'd love to be able to address this fear. You still never have to do it, obviously, but I would love to know exactly what the fear or fears about doing past life regression are for you, because then we can address it directly. So if you would be so kind, that would be marvelous. Heather Marney. Hi, Peter. Hope you were well. I was wondering if I should be trying to resolve past life issues before going to counseling and just trying to hash it out with my counselor. Well, I guess the first thing I would say is if what you're dealing with is really serious, if there's any kind of immediate threat to life and health and property and all those things, then you want to go directly to your counselor. If, however, it's something you've been dealing with for a long time, and you have the luxury of investigating other things, then I suppose you could do that. You could probably do both simultaneously. And also, like I was saying to Red Rover, if you're willing, and maybe you don't want to reveal this, but if you want to tell me what's going on, I might be able to give you a more complete answer to your question. But clearly, if it's something really pressing, you want to take action immediately. Nikki says, I would love to learn more about what I'm placed here to learn. I've had a rough life. All right, well, I'm sorry about that, Nikki. That sucks. The best way to do this is to work on the spiritual plane first. So what do I mean by that? I mean meeting with your spirit guide. And I do have tracks on my YouTube channel if you want to do this, where you meet your spirit guide. And the spirit guide, like when doing a past life regression, can actually direct you. They can actually help you. And in the case of people who have had a really hard life, some of the most valuable questions probably answers your most pressing question, which is why. Why has this happened to me? I'm going to make this up because I don't know you, but why did my father abandon the family? Why was my mother absent when I needed her the most? Why did these horrible things happen to me at these different times? And what we want in these cases is to pull the lens of the camera back far enough so that you can see the totality of your existence. You can visit something called the life between lives. You can visit the period of consciousness that a person has after they die in one lifetime and before they're born into the next lifetime. And in this space, in this spiritual space, we continue our education. We plan our upcoming incarnation. And sometimes, often, we take on certain kinds of challenges before we're born. In other words, most often we know what we're getting into. And our soul chooses this anyway. And you might say, why would we choose a difficult life? Well, why do people go to the gym? It's difficult. You encounter nothing but resistance at the gym. And the reason we go to the gym is because we become stronger by encountering resistance. And I would say the same thing is true on a spiritual level. That by encountering resistance on this plane, this decidedly very, very difficult place to navigate, when we do it and we get through it, when we do it and we raise our consciousness, we actually become stronger in every way. Not necessarily, but I suppose you could become physically stronger, but you become stronger emotionally. In all of the different ways of becoming strong emotionally, like courage, bravery, finding and using your voice, taking risks, standing up when you feel like sitting down, being able to apologize for something that you've done wrong, being able to forgive someone else when they've done something wrong. All of these virtues, we grow only, I think, when we are really challenged, when we really feel that resistance. So for you specifically, I would recommend, if you want to do one of my tracks on my YouTube channel, BlueSky Hypnosis, is do a search under that little magnifying glass for spirit guide and choose one of the journeys, one of the trips that you can take whereby you meet your spirit guide and you ask questions of the guide, like, what is my spirit name? What does the name mean? Because oftentimes your spirit name, which is your permanent name, it's not Nikki, just like mine isn't Peter. Your spirit name and what it means can reveal your life purpose. You can ask, what did I come here to learn? How many lifetimes have I been working on this? Did I choose my parents to be my parents before I was born? Did they choose me? Do I have karma with this person that has dogged me my whole life, that has given me such a hard time? Did I hurt them in a past lifetime? These are all things that can help to answer that question of why and help you move beyond all of the struggles, because once you learn whatever the underlying lesson is, there's no reason to have the same experience over and over again. Like, there's no reason to go back to the second grade when you've learned everything there is to learn in the second grade. It's time to go to the third grade. So hopefully that helps, Nikki. Sarah W. is saying she loves the quote so much. That's the quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that I read out earlier. And for those of you maybe that just tuned in, you can just rewind if you want and see what Ralph Waldo Emerson said about reincarnation and what he said about past life regression. Just a quick anecdote about him. I told you when I was growing up, I grew up in Lincoln, Massachusetts, which is next to Concord. He was in Concord. He was in a house that overlooked the old North Bridge, which is where the Minutemen faced off against the British and turned them back. They had a skirmish there and forced the British back. And I remember taking a tour of his house when I was probably like 12 or something. And the tour guide was pointing out these old panes of glass and how they had writing on them. And he and his wife would write notes to each other by etching the letters and the words into the glass panes. She would use her diamond ring and he would use a nail, which this always stuck with me for some reason. I just always thought that was so beautiful and romantic. But you can see through the windows where the battle took place. Scrolling down here. Oh, Andrea is saying, who said that? That was really something. That's Ralph Waldo Emerson. And Red Rover too. I'm glad I put the quote up. Thanks for the feedback, guys. Nikki says, do you do paid readings? So I don't consider myself a channel or a medium or a psychic. I do work with people one-on-one. That's my main business. And I work with people all over the world via Zoom. And generally speaking, they come and they say, okay, here's the list of stuff that's going on in my life that's probably been going on for a long time that I really don't like, and I want to change it. And then we work together using hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming and something called havening and life coaching to get to the root cause of what's creating these things on the surface, these unwanted things on the surface. And then we resolve these things at the deeper level. And then the things on the surface start to change. So that's what I do. And BlueSkyHypnosis.com, I also do free 20-minute Zoom sessions if you just want to talk about it and get an idea if this is something for you or not. But thank you for asking. Woo Kim says, never had a past life regression successfully yet, but I had this really strong feeling the first time I traveled to different countries on the Mediterranean that I was definitely here before. Yeah, how many people have had that experience? You know, I'm sure there's other people on this broadcast right now that have had that experience of feeling like, you know, you went to a party and you met somebody and it's like you just hit it off with them instantly. And you say things like, I feel like I've known you before. Or that's that experience that Woo Kim is talking about of going to a particular place and having this haunting, almost feeling of deja vu that I know this place, I've been here before. Or a smell you feel like you've smelled before. And I think it's particularly powerful with a place because, you know, a smell, you could have smelled something when you were a little kid. But if you grew up in the United States, for example, and you go to whatever, Europe for the first time, and there's one place there that just feels like, wow, something is really resonating with me here. There's a fascinating story of a man who was a firefighter in Connecticut. And he and his wife were coming back from somewhere, and he went into a gift shop and he picked up a magazine about the Civil War. And he said he wasn't even a history person. He just decided to pick it up. And while his wife was doing something else, he walked onto a Civil War battlefield. And he said when he was walking onto this battlefield, he felt like he was drawn, almost like a homing pigeon, to one particular part of the battlefield. And he didn't even know what the significance of it was. And when he got to this one spot, he said that he felt these intense pains in the side of his face, in his arm, like in his hip or something. And he started crying uncontrollably. Now, this is a guy who was an assistant fire chief, not a person who, you know, even he would say would be prone to crying for any reason, let alone to what seemed to him to be no reason. And he came home, he opened up the magazine, the Civil War magazine, which he hadn't even looked at up to that point, and he saw a picture of a Confederate general named John B. Gordon. And he said, I felt like I was looking at myself. And he reads more about John B. Gordon, and that it turns out he was at the battle of the same battlefield that this guy went to. His name was Jeff something or other. And he learned that Gordon was wounded 4 times that day, shot 4 times. Once through his face, another time, and I can't remember the exact wounds, but it was like the shoulder, and another one, all the places that he felt all this pain. And then he remembered, this firefighter, that when he turned 30, he went to a birthday party that the other firefighters were having for him at a bar. And he felt pain in the same places. The firefighters, all trained emergency medical personnel, thought he was having a heart attack, and they rushed him to the hospital. They did all these tests on him, couldn't find anything, and then the pain just went away. Well, Gordon got shot 4 times on his 30th birthday. Like, It's incredible. And I wish I had it spooled up here to show you the picture of what this guy, Jeff Keene is his last name, Keene, Jeff Keene. What he looks like and what John B. Gordon looked like. They do look like spitting images of each other. And even more astonishing is one of the firefighters that Keene worked with in his small company of firefighters. And it wasn't a huge town in Connecticut. There might have been at most 30 firefighters in the whole fire company. Another one of the firefighters, a spitting image of John B. Gordon's second in command. It's like you see these, two faces from this little Connecticut Fire Department and these two faces from the Confederate Army in, 1860, whatever it was, 62, and they look, Keene looks exactly like Gordon, and then Wayne Zaletta, Keene's fellow firefighter, looks exactly like John B. Gordon's second in command. It's like, what are the chances? This, absolutely astonishing to me. All right, where are we now? Oh yeah, Wu Kim was just saying that she has been to the Mediterranean and felt like she had been there before, and that just sparked this story. So thank you for bearing with me. And Nikki says, intuition and deja vu is so interesting to me. I feel like I knew and connected more when I was a child than I do now. Why is that? It is because children are totally wide open. What that means is, as adults, we have this gatekeeper that comes into play that sits between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. Children don't have this. Children are more fully integrated than we are in this sense. And this is why, or one of the reasons why, they have greater access to what we should probably have access to. They also haven't learned yet what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. They haven't trained themselves out of certain things. More things are possible. This is why little kids might walk in the room and say, how come Mr. Jones, how come you're so fat? Because they haven't learned yet you're not supposed to say that. But they haven't learned a lot of things, like you're not supposed to talk about a past life. You're not supposed to say, I met my spirit guide. You're not supposed to say, Jesus talked to me last night, because people are going to think you're nuts. So hopefully that answers your question, and thank you for asking, Nikki. Scrolling down here. Jane Kasenik says, oh, the spirit guide. Don't know who that is either. Okay, so I don't know if you've done the past life regression, because I have a particular track on my channel where you meet your guide first and then you do the past life regression. That is probably something that I would suggest you for sure try. Search my channel under past life regression and pick the one that you meet your spirit guide and then you do the past life regression. Very, very helpful. If you have that comforting presence and you feel comfortable with the guide, it's easier to go into the past life. And the guide may say to you, you're not ready to go into the past lifetime. You have to do this first. And you go, okay, great, I'll do this first. So hopefully that helps you, Jane. 30-Day Jeff. He says, like Jane, I had no luck in getting to a past life. Never used a professional, but my mind seems to wander. Okay. Jeff, if you didn't hear what I said to Jane earlier, I recommend that when this gets posted on my YouTube channel, BlueSky Hypnosis, under live, that you go back and just watch the description that I gave to Jane. I gave her a very comprehensive description of what could be causing the block to the past life. And I recommended that she work with a pendulum. I have a video using a pendulum to overcome a past life block to pinpoint exactly the reason that you're having problems. But if you just watch that section, I think it may shed some important light for you that helps you get through the block. All right, thank you. Laura Davallo. Hello, Peter. Greetings from Spain. Wow, Spain. Awesome. I've had 7 successful regressions using your amazing videos. For me, the key is to just relax and let go of any expectations. I can't really visualize, so I try to use the rest of my senses in the beginning. Then my conscious mind takes a backspace and suddenly I can see, hear, sense as vividly as in a dream. I want to give you a round of applause for that. That's so perfect. so perfect. And Nikki had this question a little while ago of, why can kids do these things that adults can't do? Well, they don't get in their own way. So when you say, I'm following whatever's coming to me. So if I'm expecting to see something, but somebody pats me on the shoulder, I look around and go, who's patting me on the shoulder? If I feel the soles of my feet getting hot, I ask myself, well, where am I standing that my feet would get hot? If I hear something like a bell ringing or hear people talking, I pay attention to that and I follow whatever is being given to me. And you talked about how you just allow, you let things be what they want to be. This is very, very important. And as you do this, you go deeper and deeper and deeper into the experience. Your conscious mind takes more and more of what you're calling that back seat, and everything becomes more vivid. The things that maybe you weren't able to see before, now suddenly sight starts coming forward. So this is really, really good advice actually for everybody to follow what you're talking about here. Don't let yourself get discouraged, folks. Everybody can do a past life regression. There's some tips earlier in this video about how to overcome blocks if you missed that. So thank you so much for that, Laura. Really appreciate that. And Jane is saying, yeah, she's going to try all those suggestions. Andrea, excuse me. I love the idea of suspending the fear. It seems more doable for those of us with control issues, conscious or otherwise. Absolutely, absolutely. And I wish I could say I were super brilliant and I came to this immediately. It took me years to figure that out. But yeah. How can we make things as simple? How can we make things as less threatening as possible so people can move past these other kinds of blocks? So I just wanted to look at a couple more of these preset questions I wrote down here because I said I was gonna answer these. One of them is there danger? Someone said earlier, I don't know if it was Nikki or someone else, someone said that they were, hang on, it was the person with the, who was that? Somebody said that she was afraid of doing past life regression. I was asking, hey, if you could tell us why you're afraid, I could address that. But in general, the number one fear that people have with doing past life regression is they're afraid of what they'll find. They're afraid that they'll find that they were a horrible, person in a past lifetime, that they were an SS guard at a concentration camp in World War II, abusing and killing people. That's the kind of thing that they mean when they're afraid of what they're going to find out. And there's not any danger in finding that information out. If anything, it exposes it to the light. It disinfects it. It gives you the chance to atone for something horrible you might have done in a past lifetime. And in general, we've all been everything. We've been the hero. We have been the goat. We have been the villain. We've been the bit player. We've been the big person. We've not spoken up when we should have. All of these things. And there's no shame in this. It's just important to address it head on and to atone and then move on. Is there any problem? Sometimes I read people saying this. Could you get stuck in hypnosis? No. The worst that could happen is you fall asleep and you wake up normally. Can you make things worse in your life by doing past life regression? Well, in the short run, you might be crying or you might be sad. And part of that could be almost like an emotional detox. But long term, I've never seen any kind of harm come from doing past life regression. The other question is, how do I know that past life regression is real? And I sort of touched on this earlier, but I will say it again. And that is, you have the experience. And based upon your experience, you decide what it means to you. Not someone else telling you, oh, that's all bullshit. Or, yeah, it's 100% real. You have the experience. And I guarantee you, if your emotions get going, and they often do, that's a pretty powerful convincer, at least for me and for the clients that I've worked with. That something fascinating is happening here. And as an aside to this, I don't remember his name, but I just read something recently about an MD who decided to investigate near-death experiences. And he came to the conclusion, after many, many years of investigating this from a scientific standpoint, that it's real, that there's no other explanation. And if the spirit or the soul survives physical death, even for a period of time, that could be 30 seconds, it could be 30 minutes or longer, and then the person is revived, so they had no heartbeat, no brainwave, and now they've been revived, and they talk about what happened in the room, what people said, what they did. They talk about meeting with religious figures. They talk about meeting with deceased relatives and seeing them as perfectly healthy and communicating with them. If this is real, how would reincarnation not be real? If you can live beyond what science says you can live, and then you're revived and you talk about having all this experience, why would you die and then 30 minutes later or an hour later or 3 minutes later, that would be the end of it? So these are things worth pondering, I think. All right, let's see if there's a couple more questions here before we say goodbye for the weekend ahead of us. Barb Waterman says, glad I stumbled upon this. Thank you. You're so welcome. I hope you come back. Let's see. Cindy Talks says, my dad always talked about past life. Rest in peace. She says, I believe in this. And I'm just going to see if there are other people that I haven't addressed them yet. Jamie Brooks says, I do soul center healing hypnosis for people now. And we do entity release and chakra rebuild and past life regression. That's really cool. Yeah, I agree with you. I do all the same stuff except for the chakra rebuild. So glad you're doing that work. Let's see. This Andrea Likes Music says, my primary sense is auditory and chills or a tap in my head. So that would be kind of auditory and kinesthetic. There we go. I want to like pendulums, but I don't trust myself enough for it. I haven't gone into past lives much yet, probably for the same reason. All right, so let me just say this about pendulums. The pendulum is moving based upon you. It's based upon micro movements that your subconscious mind is controlling. So your subconscious mind controls your autonomic nervous system, your whole body. And it produces these micro movements that you can't really see and you can't really feel, and that dictates the direction that the pendulum is moving. And what I would say as a definition about the pendulum is that the pendulum is an amplifier. So when you meet a person for the first time, you might think, wow, I really like this person. Or you might think, actually it's feel, I don't really trust this person. I don't want to be anywhere near them. So what part of you is coming to that conclusion? Well, we usually say it's like a gut feeling. Our bodies are always communicating to us. They are always sending messages to us. But we're so divorced from our bodies in this culture that we're generally only aware of what the body is telling us, like I like that person or he seems dangerous, when it's a very powerful message. But everything that you want to put in your mouth, like is it artificial sweetener? Is it a banana? Your body is essentially telling you through these micro movements whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. And the pendulum is simply amplifying what your body is already doing. So if you feel comfortable following your instinct, your intuition, your gut feeling, then this is essentially the exact same part of you. And the pendulum just amplifies that so that you can determine very quickly what answer you're getting from your body. Doing the past life, whether that's something that's scary or not, if you want now or later, peter@blueskyhypnosis.com. If you have questions, feel free to ask them, specifically about what is scary, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And it doesn't, in the end, I don't have a vested interest in you definitely doing this, but I love to help people get past any blocks that they may have if this is a tool that they really do want to use. So thank you for that, for pointing that out. And then she also says, do you think it would have been as intense if he hadn't visited the site? Oh, wow. I think I'm missing some other part of what you were saying, because below that, Andrea says something about the firefighter. The firefighter, I'm a little behind. I have a 5-year-old. So maybe your 5-year-old said something. I'm not really sure. All right. 30-day Jeff. What percentage of successful regressions when you do Zoom calls with people on the first time, or does it take multiple times and some people never really achieve it? Great question. A first session for me is really kind of building the professional relationship. So it's understanding the client. Why are they here? What do they want to do? Because past life regression is a tool. And we use tools to achieve some kind of result. So if you said to me, I have a really hard time with relationships, women keep leaving me, for example. That's a pattern. There's something that created that pattern. And the origin point of that pattern was either earlier in this life or was a past life. So we're working towards helping you make important changes in your life. Therefore, the first session there's a lot of talking, of collecting information that's specific to you. What are you dealing with? How long have you been dealing with it? What things have you tried to get rid of it? What are the big traumas in your life that actually may be related to one or more things that are going on that you just don't want any more of? You want these things to change. And then we generally start working on those things. We might use a faster technique in the interests of time. A second session is where we would start doing deeper dives, like present day regression, past life regression, meeting your spirit guide, figuring out your life purpose, what's your spirit name, and so on. The second part of your question was, when you approach things this way, what percentage of people are successful doing regressions? And I'm going to say, from my perspective, it's 100%. Does that mean that there aren't people who later say, gee, I wonder if I was making all that up? No, that's definitely a possibility. But from my perspective, the people who actually go into the past and they're describing what's happening, and they often feel very powerful emotions at the same time, that's a successful regression. Now, the people who come to me are self-selected. This is not people, just off the street. And I'm also not trying to do it in the first session, because part of what can be in the way is if a person's uncomfortable with me because they don't know me, that can be a barrier. And that first session also serves that purpose of building rapport between me and the client. And then me understanding all about that, the important things about that client, so that when we're in hypnosis, I know, oh wow, maybe this other thing over here they told me about is also related to this trauma that occurred when they were 5 years old, or in 1761 when they were, in the French and Indian Wars. Okay, hopefully that answers your question. Flower to the People says, this has been a really great session, and I've enjoyed all the input from the comments section too. Awesome. I agree with you, Flower to the People, and thank you to you and everyone else for your wonderful questions and comments. Really, really appreciate that. Andrea is saying, I really appreciate your explanation of pendulums. Thank you. I've been afraid maybe my subconscious would just tell me what I want to hear. That's the part about pendulums that is so compelling, is that you will often get an answer that you absolutely 100% positively thought it was going to be different. There was a time in the past when my kids were still young, and I had been doing this for a period of time. I started out doing it part-time and was working, and then I quit my job and I was doing this full-time, and I was doing some other things, and the pendulum basically told me to focus on this. And I was sure, based on my financial situation at the time, that it was going to say, no, you got to quit this and go back into the corporate world. I kind of wanted that because it seemed safe. And I just kept getting no, no, no. And I kept asking because it was like, how can this be right? How can this be? And I kept getting the same answer. And I decided to follow that wisdom. And it's like, it took another, it wasn't even that long. It was like another month or something, or 8 weeks. And everything just kind of unfolded. But I had been ready through fear to ditch this work and go back into the corporate world. And that's just one example of so many times that this has happened, where I have received answers that I didn't think that was going to be the answer. And it actually made me a little nervous. If anything, I sort of wanted the other answer. So, and you know when you're using this thing and you get an answer, wait a minute, why? Why am I getting a yes to that question when I think it should be a no? So it's like most things in life. The more you practice with a tool, the more confidence you develop in yourself, and the more confidence you develop in the efficacy of that tool, whatever it is. Whether it's a hammer or a computer, you just understand more and more how to use it, and more you have confidence that it's really helping you. And I believe the same is true with the pendulum. It's a simple tool, but the part, and this is a larger point here I want to make. I feel like one of the main things that I do for people is in helping them learn to trust themselves. You have enormous wisdom inside of you. And you've been taught that you're a small little person, that you get 70, 80 years on this tiny little planet, and that's kind of it. And you don't have that much power. And I've found that's not true. And that when people let go of some of this programming that keeps you small and you step into your power, amazing things happen. So with that, I would like to just thank everybody once again for turning up, for making great comments, great questions, for supporting each other as you always do. And I hope you have a wonderful, lovely rest of your weekend. Oh, and I'll do my disclaimer now. If you have any serious psychological things, go see your licensed psychotherapist. If you have any important physical things, go see your doctor. And I will plan to do another live probably in about 2 weeks or so. I will announce it through the emails that I send out. Hopefully you guys are getting my emails. If you're not on my email list, I hope you will get on that list. The link is in the description of this video, and this video, as long as the visual and audio comes out well, will be posted, so you can check it out later or send it to people if you want to. Thank you again. Take care. Goodbye.